Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm giving some seconds for the participants to join. Great. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, maybe, from where you're joining. Thank you for being here. My name is Paula Galvez. I am a ethics manager at Globethics, and it's a pleasure to be with all of you. In my case, it's this afternoon, but in any case, it's a real honor to be with you. Let me start by giving the floor to Globethics Executive Director, Professor Dr. Fadi Daou, to express some welcome remarks. The floor is yours, Fadi.
Thank you, Paula, and hello, everybody. The fellows who are with us on the screen and all who are joining. Also, those who applied and did not get the same chance as the selected fellows, but still interested to be involved in this process, and all the others who are joining us in this very important moment for Globethics. We are really proud to launch. This is the first event in this new program at Globethics, and very proud to launch this fellowship focused on AI ethics and considering the cultural, spiritual, ethical backgrounds and how young people as our fellows are and will even more contribute to better usage and governance of AI globally and in very diverse context. So we are proud to have you, and all my best wishes for your experience for the fellows in this program, but also all those who are joining online. Be sure that we do everything to stay in touch and to also involve you the way we can. Over to you, Paula, and looking forward to see everybody in Geneva.
Thank you very much, Fadi. Now I am going to share my screen as I have a couple of slides to share with you. And can I get a hands up if you can see my screen, please? Is it working? Wonderful. Thank you so much. Once again, welcome to this first webinar of our open track, Emerging Leaders in Ethical AI Governance, with the theme, Meet the Cohort, Shaping the Future of Ethical AI Governance. While I introduce this first session, please don't hesitate to write in the chat where you're joining from, the affiliation, as we will be more than happy to know who's joining this first webinar. And indeed, this marks the official launch of the Open Track, this new public program that is running alongside the Globethics Fellowship, where we aim to expand access to high-quality dialogue on ethical AI governance beyond the fellowship cohort, reaching a broader community of emerging leaders who applied or who are engaged in this space. We also want to create meaningful touchpoints between the public and the fellowship through webinars and live Q&As that generate cross-regional exchange and collective learning. Through this Open Track program, we will have 6 webinars along the rest of the year. Some of them will be led by our fellows, some others will be led by Globethics team with external experts. So we do hope that you guys stay engaged with this Open Track. And last but not least, the aim of this Open Track is to build a visible, active community around ethical AI governance that sustains engagement beyond the fellowship cycle and feeds into longer-term networks and advocacy. For today's agenda, we will introduce the 2026 fellow cohort, the projects they will develop over these coming months, and begin building the Open Track community by getting to know the practitioners, researchers, and advocates joining today and understanding what brings you to this space, guys. And without further ado, the chosen fellows for this year are Addie Achan, Deborah ARTHUR, Angela Ng, Chandrima Ganguly, Joel Christoph, Meem Arafat Manab, Vasileios R, Mohamed Alouane, Natália Amasiadi, Pedro dos Santos Maya, Rilla Gusela Sumisra, Muriithi, Aryan Agarwal, Emaan Malik, and Arno Ratzinger. Can I get a round of applauses, an online round of applauses for these fantastic and brilliant minds that are joining the Globethics family this semester to work on very impactful projects. Now, let's move into getting to know them. Today, we have some of the fellows joining this webinar to get to know them, and we're certainly missing the fellows that could not join, but there are always conflict in agendas. But how is it going to work for this fellowship project showcase? We'll get to know the fellows in groups of 3 and 4. Each fellow will pitch their project in 2 minutes, and I invite you all to listen for the problem that the fellows are addressing, the impact they are working toward, and any challenges or support they are currently seeking. After each group completes their pitches, we will open a discussion with a question to spark exchange among the fellows. And during that segment, please feel free to react and engage through the chat, because we want this to be a live conversation. Each group discussion will run about 10 minutes, so please stay with us. There is a lot of ground to cover. And only right before we start with the first group, as I have not mentioned their impactful short bios, feel free to go into Globethics website, as their short bios are there, and also a short information about their projects. But I don't want to change your attention for now, so let's get directly into getting to know our fellows and their pitches. The first group I'm calling is Rilla, Vasileios, and Addie. Hey, Vasileios. Hey, Rilla. Hello, Addie. How are you?
Hello there.
Doing well.
Hello.
Hi.
Wonderful. Shall I start with you, Vasileios?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'll be more than happy to. And I guess that we are very, very, very tight in terms of time. My name is Vasileios R. I'm EU Policy Director at Credo AI based in Brussels for nearly 10 years. And truly a proud fellow for Globethics. And a bit more about my project here. Over the course of my doctoral research, I became increasingly preoccupied by a question that effectively extends beyond traditional debates on platform regulation or freedom of expression. Across democratic societies, the infrastructures through which citizens access information, form political judgment, and of course participate in public life are increasingly shaped not by human institutions alone, but by algorithmic systems that rank, that curate, that suppress, and even generate expression itself. And yet, again, our constitutional regulatory frameworks were never really designed for a world in which public discourse is actually mediated by opaque AI systems trained on normative assumptions that remain largely invisible and democratically unaccountable for. So my project effectively seeks to confront that emerging governance vacuum, if you will, building on comparative constitutional research across Europe, across the United States, and Asia, mainly focusing on Japan for this case study. I will aim to develop the foundation of a global framework for algorithmic transparency, algorithmic expression governance across cultural normative architecture for governing AI's role in digital civic spaces. Rather than, simply advancing a singular Western governance vision, the project effectively explores how different societies understand concepts such as dignity, such as trust, pluralism, and voice, and how these traditions effectively can inform shared principles for responsible AI stewardship of public discourse. And the fellowship actually serves as a fantastic forum which could actually provide a unique environment to refine those ideas through dialogue across demographics, across geographies, disciplines, and of course value systems. And the ambition is not merely academic here. The project is effectively designed to contribute directly to ongoing governance processes, including the implementation of the EU AI Act, the Hiroshima AI process, UNESCO,
Thank
and
you,
of course, Council of
Vasileios.
European Initiatives, and emerging international standards on that space. So thank you so much for your time. If you have any
I
questions, please
appreciate it.
don't reach out.
Wonderful. And as Vasily said, in fact, I will share a short survey after we finish these speeches from our fellows so that you guys that are joining the Open Track program can tell us how you see you could contribute to these projects, and the fellows will receive this information with your contact so they can coordinate with you as they see fit. Just reminding our fellows that we have 2 minutes to pitch our projects, please. And regarding the short bios, don't worry because we have shared them over the chat. And now the floor is to Rilla. Here you go.
Thank you so much. So I'm Rilla. You can call me Rilla. And I'm a digital policy analyst in the Ministry of Communications and Digital Affairs in my country, Indonesia. So basically, my work is focused on digital policy transformation. So basically everything in technology sector. And I also contribute to policy recommendations like drafting the policy brief, memos, research, including the Indonesian's national regulatory or presidential regulations on AI roadmap and also ethical AI. So basically, my background, even though it's digital policy, my background was computer science, and then my master's is the intersections of management, public policy, and also digital. So before coming to the policy vibes, I would say I was a programmer and software and basically developing AI based project back then. So that's why I think because of my experiences, I was really struck by it's we are not only making technology, we need to govern the technology itself, because as a developer back then, I see there's a risk a lot about this development. And that's why for this fellowship, basically my project is contextualizations of the AI, basically in multicultural settings, because in my country, Indonesia, we have more than 100 languages. I would say 700 languages, and then 100 of tribes and also race. So that's why I would like to know, because the main challenge that I want to address is the gap between the global AI ethics, the national AI ethics, but also with the local implementations. So many AI ethic frameworks, there's a lot of AI frameworks, I believe, speak about fairness, transparency, and data protection principle. But these principles are important, of course, but they often remain too abstract for institutions that must implement them in real social, in real cultural or organizational context. So I think in diverse society like Indonesia, we need to take account, especially like right now we are drafting about the presidential regulations on AI ethics and national roadmap. So this will drive or help Indonesia to drive the what should we govern AI, and maybe
Thank
in
you
the
very
future.
much, Rilla.
Yes, thank you so much.
That was great. Thank you so much. And of course, to get to know more about Rilla's project, check our website and fill the survey if you think that this topic resonates with what you're working on or researching about. Addie, the floor is yours.
Cool. Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. My name's Addie. I'm from the United States. And my project is about helping local communities create governance frameworks to help scope how AI is integrated within them. So I'm a former AI engineer and later a philanthropic allocator. Both were in the AI for good space. And I felt that in both those spaces, there was a bit of an incentive problem with AI. Often we would push for use and high numbers for bottom lines, whether that's profit or usage or lives impacted. But I thought that tended to, perhaps acknowledge risk, but often downplay it as it would sort of be in conflict of driving those bottom lines. I think that combined with a US bias and a lack of lived experience in the communities that these institutions were trying to help would often create risk for communities and liability for on-the-ground organizations who are pressured to adopt AI. So I really want to change that by having communities surface the exact needs they have, along with concerns about AI use when meeting those needs, and then have tech philanthropy or other parties respond within those confines. And I hope that the outcome is that I do think the idea of like AI-driven social impact is possible, but given the distrust of the technology that's based on real limitations, it needs to be governed where it's deployed. And I think solutions should be led with designing around limitations rather than addressing them after. And I do actually think that those narrow scopes can help create more effective and better adopted solutions as well. And I think like some key challenges I have is that I've done a pilot, but I'm unsure how to approach scale, especially as different communities obviously have different needs. And policy seems like a good way to arbitrate these misaligned incentives. But like those institutions I criticize, I also have a US bias, and navigating those systems internationally is a bit of an unknown to me. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much, Addie. Perfect timing for your pitch. And also great way that you explained to us how the project will focus on. And I think I hope many of our participants for the open track may be able to support this meaningful project. So as I said, it would be interesting to exchange a bit, and I would like to ask you, what is one moment in your career that shaped how you think about technology and ethics? Here, please, let's make it a conversation. So whoever would like to share.
Yeah, I can start off if that's okay. Cool. So around like last year, OpenAI kind of recognized me for some of the nonprofit work I did. But I think as that was happening, it felt more like a nice marketing strategy than effective change, because a lot of the work that I had done in social impact with AI was based on either the money invested into the technology and the usage. And I felt that neither of those had anything to do with quality. And I think that it's such also like an arbitrary metric about like usage or lives impacted when it comes to AI. And what felt especially concerning is that it drove nonprofits to pressure to adopt AI, which would ultimately potentially expose their communities to harm. And then a lot of philanthropies would partner with big tech to kind of like surface their technical gaps. So this all made me think that like, if they waited for AI to be simpler or safer, then their bottom lines wouldn't really be affected, or their bottom lines wouldn't be progressed. So it kind of goes in conflict of what they're solving for, which makes me think, kind of like my conclusion is that can ethical AI be implemented by those who benefit from AI's usage, whether that's profit or otherwise? And I don't know if other people have opinions, but I think that the answer is no, since we can't expect them to be unbiased as they're reaching goals. And I think we need a bit of like an independent arbitrator for ethics.
Any reaction? Yes,
Not as much as a reaction, but I really love the framing of Addie here. I think that's a really brilliant thought to actually share, and it really speaks to the added value that your project actually brings. I'm really excited to see what actually comes out of that. I think that's really fantastic stuff. From my point of view, I think that what kind of like shaped my thinking most was the gradual convergence of experience across public institutions, industry, and academia. So I've tried quite a few things in my previous life, so to speak, in the sense that there's a lot of soul searching, so quite a few stations there. I could actually start at the European Commission, where I saw how difficult it is for democratic and legal frameworks to actually keep up pace with technological advancements. I could also examine that question from the perspective of big tech, where at Microsoft I gained an insight on how large corporations actually navigate the real world tensions between innovation, governance, and societal impact, very much to Addie's point, basically. And at my current function at Credo AI, working directly on operationalizing the EU AI Act, I actually realized that ethical AI governance only sort of becomes meaningful when principles can actually be translated into deployable systems, institutional practices. So all those things, alongside my my academic research on AI and freedom of expression pushed me to step back a bit and actually ask a much deeper constitutional question that speaks also or reflects, mirrors a bit better my project, which basically is, what happens to democratic legitimacy when public discourse itself actually becomes algorithmically mediated. So altogether, those kind of like experiences, this spectrum of experience, shaped a much more holistic, if you will, understanding of technology ethics. One grounded not only in the regulation part of or the regulation part or innovation part, but in preserving human agency, first and foremost, trust, but also democratic values in the digital age. That's more or less how I would actually address such a question.
Yeah, I think it's the same with my other fellows because based on our experience, and then we somehow have the click that okay, that's that's something that we need to work on. So maybe in my personal experience, because I was a software developer, and I think particularly changed my thought about technology and ethics is when I was working on as AI developer in Japan, like in 2019. I think it was before COVID. And at the time, I was making like GPT, training the data. It's like a mini GPT back then. And it was like years ago. And then I was thinking like, oh, it will be big things in the future. And then, and what happens if the data is coming from like everywhere, every people and all of the social media? I think everyone is like exposed. So I was worried and concerned about the ethics and the governance, like everything. And that's why it's shaping my career. Like, what should I do next? So I joined like organizations or like the internet governance organizations and also the government. It's really hard because like coming from private sector and then you working with NGO before and then after coming to government, and I see that there's something that I can make impact. It's really hard, but I see it's something that is important that I can do, especially in how country, especially or the basically like for example like EU or other countries from the regulation they can derive to the framework to implementation, and it should be something that we need to do. And maybe that's my turning point, especially like why I worried or concerned about the ethical aspect in technology because it's really influence a lot in our life. So yeah.
Yeah, indeed. And I think that many of the participants joining the open track may find it resonating with their own journeys. If you guys feel that any of the situations that Vasileios, Rilla, or Addie shared, please don't hesitate to write it in the chat because we would really like to be knowing how you feel as well. Because there is a reason why you're joining this webinar. So there might be a moment in your career that have, made this shift on making you more conscious about AI ethics and also turning into more mission-driven professions. Thank you so much to Vasileios, Addie, and Rilla. It's wonderful to get to know you, and as we have mentioned before, we will be sharing a survey later, so you can find the connections and how to engage more. Let me go to the next group now, and I would like to ask Pedro to start with his speech.
Hi,
Pedro,
everybody. Hi, can you hear me? Yeah. So, hi, everybody. Nice to see you all. My name is Pedro, and I have a background in political science and technology studies. I've been researching emerging technology for almost the last 10 years. And currently, I'm working on a project on knowledge forms and expertise in diplomacy and AI governance. And I felt something lacking, which is precisely the participation or a more significant participation of civil society. And I wanted to understand kind of why this is happening. And that's kind of the problem I'm trying to tackle with this in this great opportunity with the fellowship. And I wanted to understand which types of knowledge, which types of expertise, kind of information, and also which types of expert forms can be instrumentalized by civil society to make their voices heard in these places of AI governance, and especially in international arena. So the idea, ideally with this outcome, is to kind of have a toolbox of the types of knowledge and what kind of expertise it's more valued and it's more legitimate in these scenarios. So civil society organizations can pick from that and kind of build a stronger participation in a more democratic and more human-centered AI governance. That's kind of my pitch and the whole idea of this fellowship.
Yeah, very well summarized. Thank you, Pedro, because it's huge work in the sense of making civil society contributions to AI governance more meaningful, right? Where we see a lot of barriers. Thank you so much also for bearing with time. Let me call now Emaan so that we could know their project. Hello, Emaan. The floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. My name is Emaan. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I work at Pakistan's National Human Rights Institution, NCHR. I lead the Child Protection and Minority Protection Unit at NCHR, where we are increasingly seeing AI-enabled rights abuses come into our complaint cell, into our policy cell, knowledge production cell. It's really overarching, right? Pakistan does not have an AI law, and our Electronic Crimes Act has been widely criticized as a tool to stifle public critique. The focus of my project, which is an early warning and response protocol for AI amplified incitement against religious minorities, are the Christian community, Hindu community, and Ahmadi community in Pakistan, along with other religious minorities. Just last year, we saw 344 cases at my firm of folks who have been entrapped by digitally altered images of blasphemous content. And as you know, in Pakistan, this carries a life sentence. So we are currently representing those 344 young folks from minority communities who are in jail just for having a AI altered image in their phone sent to them by folks trying to entrap them. So just an example, I can share more later when we have an opportunity. But my project has 3 partners. We will be working with my commission, digital monitoring organization Media Matters for Democracy in Pakistan, and also the Christian community as a pilot, schools, CSOs, and the church. These partners are aware and are onboarded as potential partners for this project. The project itself will have 3 layers. So we'll be looking at protection, which is an early warning system, education, which is a field guide and a verification toolkit in English and regional languages in Pakistan that teach communities with a focus on youth on how to identify deepfakes and online entrapment. And the third pillar is obviously policy. My firm does serve as the mandated watchdog for the government for all laws, policy, and international reporting. So with Pakistan's first AI policy coming out this year, we're seeing this discussion on the front line. So I'm excited to contribute to that with the help of my fellows in the open track. And a question for the open track: I'm an English major from a liberal arts college. Would love a technical person to help me out if somebody resonates with this project. I don't know how to code. I don't know any of that. So if there's somebody like that, that would be great. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Emaan. That's wonderful. And I think there will be somebody from the open track, and also hopefully your mentor that comes from that side. Wonderful. Now please let me call Natália Amasiadi to share with us the pitch of her project.
Thank you so much, Paula, and thank you so much to Globethics for this huge opportunity. My name is Natália Amasiadi, and I'm a PhD researcher in AI ethics within the Department of Medicine at the University of Patras. My academic background combines philosophy, bioethics, and medical law, and my research focuses on the ethical challenges of artificial intelligence in clinical trials and drug development. So basically, my project addresses an important and rapidly growing challenge. While AI has the potential to transform biomedical research and accelerate drug development, ethical governance often struggles to keep pace with technological innovation. Today, AI systems are increasingly used to optimize clinical trial design, identify patient populations, predict treatment responses, and support pharmacovigilance. However, these systems can also introduce serious ethical risks, including algorithm bias, lack of transparency, privacy concerns, and unequal representation of vulnerable populations in clinical data sets. So basically, the main goal of my research is to explore how ethical principles such as fairness, transparency, accountability, trustworthiness, and respect for patient autonomy can be integrated into the development and implementation of AI systems in biomedical research. The intended impact, may I add to this one, of this work is to contribute to more ethically responsible, human-centered AI governance in healthcare. Ultimately, I hope this research can support researchers, clinicians, regulators, and policymakers in developing AI systems that are not only innovative and efficient, but also equitable and trustworthy. And maybe one of the key challenges in this field is balancing rapid technological progress with ethical oversight and public trust. And for this reason, interdisciplinary collaboration between medicine, ethics, law, and data science is essential. So thank you so much for your attention, and I'm really looking forward to your questions.
Thank you, Natália. Wonderful. So let me call here to the stage also Emaan and Pedro, so we can exchange a bit. I think the richness of this fellowship is the diversity of our projects, right? And also thank you for sharing how what are the ways that we can seek contributions from the open track. So let me just ask you something. What is one thing about AI governance dialogues that frustrate you, and one thing that gives you hope? Whoever would like to start.
I can start if that's okay. I think one thing that frustrates me is that sometimes the conversation, I think, as Natália said, is moving so fast that countries that are technologically still behind are sometimes not part of the loop. For example, Pakistan, a large proportion of our women living in rural areas don't even have access to phones right now. So if you show them a deepfake image or like anything like that, it's magic to them, right? Like, how is this happening? What is the process? What are the basics here? So I think this speed of does kind of like the conversation in rooms when we like don't include these populations which make up like most of the globe, sometimes can be discouraging. But at the same time, this very notion shows that there's space for curiosity in these countries. I think this was an ITU stat. There was research on levels of excitement regarding AI. And I think that it showed that in the West, they have reached a point where there is a lot of inhibition and fear about the growth of AI. But in Southeast Asia, and there's a lot of excitement about AI, right? And one stat I saw the other day is like the most amount of slop AI is coming out of Pakistan and India, which I found obviously like that's something like you can laugh off, but it's still interesting, right? It's being used for creative processes. And it's also a great equalizer in the sense that it's an access to English, which I've seen in Pakistan in the last couple of years. It helps folks who are maybe not well versed in English to now use AI to, form policy, to create scripts, to public speak, to become more confident. Even like I work in a government organization, so we have a lot of older folks who are used to like paper systems and they're not willing to speak up, but AI has helped them, contribute to research, to speak at events, and I see those really like competent leaders step forward and bring their best. So I think those are two things that I kind of thought of, and I'll hear from my colleagues now.
Can I piggyback on what Emaan just said? Because I think that also one of the few things that frustrates me about these AI dialogues, sometimes we forget that AI is actually built by people, and some of these people, they're actually in the global south having to deal with not only have to deal with a huge amount of data, they're cleaning and be exposed to different types of violent content. And they're also, sometimes we forget that these systems, they have to be disposed. They are retired. And what do we do then with all this huge material infrastructure that we put in place? How we're able to find a way of striking some balance between not only producing and having functional AI market, which is working for the people, but also for the environment as well. So some of those points, when we think that AI has really material consequences and also human consequences, I think when I see that missing, I think it kind of frustrates me a little bit in these scenarios.
Oh, amazing comments, both to you, Pedro and Emaan. And maybe I can add a teeny tiny to that. I think one thing that often frustrates me a little bit in AI governance dialogues is that discussion can become either too abstract or too technical without enough connection to real world implementation. I think we often have very strong ethical principles on paper, like, as I mentioned before, fairness, transparency, and accountability, but there's still a gap when it comes to translating this into practical enforceable mechanisms, especially in fast-moving areas like clinical AI. But at the same time, what gives me a little bit of hope is the increasing level of interdisciplinary engagement. I see scientists and ethicists and clinicians and regulators and policymakers actually working together more than ever before. There is, I think, also a growing awareness that AI governance cannot be left to technology alone. It requires shared responsibility, and that shift toward collaboration and responsible innovation makes me optimistic that we are moving in the right direction, even if the path is a little bit complex.
It is, and we have a big opportunity, especially this year, with the first time that the Global Dialogue on AI Governance will meet, right, this July in Geneva. Try to make this table, let's say, bigger so that we can have, as you said, scientists, but at the same time, psychologists, sociologists, etc., because we do need this part. And I am sure that your projects, guys, will help us operationalize these principles that we keep listening, and sometimes some policymakers with the best intentions try to create new ones, but actually we are going towards more of the operationalization, right? Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the exchange that you had, and I hope our participants did as well. We will pass to the next group now. Thank you. Josie is helping us with the spotlight of you. And the next fellow that will share, it's going to be Meem. So I'm calling second group now, Meem, Angela, and then Nancy. The floor is your name, Meem.
Hello everyone, I'm Meem. I'm originally from Bangladesh, but now based in Madrid. But I'm actually in Mexico right now, and it's 5:30. It's very, very early. Sorry for the blanket. So, anyways, I work at Universidad Politécnica de Madrid, which is the the technical university of Madrid, and I work as an early stage researcher. It's a Marie Curie project, and what we work on is basically what I like to call a translation problem, because I had an undergraduate in computer science and then I did a master's in law, like digital rights and digital law, which has led me to this frustration that these two groups of people don't necessarily understand each other. Like a lot of computer scientists, while very well intentioned and very focused on ethical principles, for example, are not really willing to even comply with law, because people have this conception that law might become sort of discarded or sort of too old by the time AI develops at super pace that is developing right now, which doesn't have to be necessarily true. And also there is this other frustration that policymakers and legal experts, while again very well intentioned, very excited about technology, may not always fully understand what they're talking about. For example, there is this famous right in EU, which is right to be forgotten, which lets you erase your digital traces, so to speak. But for example, this is quite impossible with the current technology of AI because unlearning is still a very novel concept in computer science. So these kind of gaps exist all the time. We were recently working on, for example, how this is utterly frustrating that LLMs, while very good at generating human sounding words, drafting applications and all of that, are very bad with reasoning with law. And parts of it comes from the idea that like these machines, these models read law the same way that it reads, for example, a novel. So it does not necessarily differentiate between the various texts that we're feeding into it. And like my project idea is actually very simple, and I think it's quite timely. For example, there was a like news yesterday of Anthropic collaborating with the Catholic Church, because my understanding is that like we have a lot of countries in this world. Some will say 193, some people will say more than 200. And these laws do change, but these laws and like our ethical principles are partly derived from shared common values, and a lot of them do actually still derive from religion and will keep being derived from major religions across the world. So what I wanted to see and what I wanted to explore is how we can build these knowledges, these ethical what do you call them, like these ethical sources of us, into some knowledge graph, something more machine readable and not just an abundance of text. Because what we have right now is not sadly working more than like this is working like a magic show. You see a machine talking to you that is better at pretending to be your grandma than your grandma, because it doesn't even like it remembers things very well. But that's where it stops when it comes to, for example, reasoning with whether reasoning with any question, like even a simple ethical question or a simple legal question, the machines fail amazingly. So this is something that I want to explore, which is like building these knowledges into something more machine readable. This is something what I do for living, because I
Thank you
used
very
to
much,
previously work
Meem.
with the School of Religion. Thank you so much. I took my time.
We appreciate it. And I think the comparative framework mapping that you will do with the different doctrinal traditions will be very helpful. As you say, it's very timely. Appreciate it. Let me call now, please, Angela Ng to share the pitch of her project. The floor is yours, Angela.
Hi, thank you everyone. My name is Angela and I've been in social impact my whole life. I've worked in water sanitation across Bangladesh, South Africa, the DRC, maternal child health in India, coding and robotics in Zimbabwe, Rwanda, and the US for underserved populations, and sustainability and STEM education in the Middle East. Now I work teaching AI adoption for nonprofits and bringing the communities together while helping solve some of the world's most pressing problems, especially in climate, health, education, economic mobility, and safety. And I try to do so sustainably and responsibly. So the reason why is because a lot of people around the world have discovered vibe coding and they're moving really fast to solve these problems, but they're not talking to the people who are already doing the work, the nonprofits, the community organizations, the practitioner, and the places without reliable Wi-Fi and electricity. They're using AI to do their data and research, not realizing it's trained on data that's not representative. And so it's a faster way to repeat old mistakes and it's not really innovation. So my project today is about building that bridge, developing the practical frameworks for AI builders and nonprofits to work together so that people with the technical power and the people with the ground truth are in the same conversation. I want to understand like the physical, the social, and the cognitive issues that come with AI and ask the right questions when we develop the AI projects, even if AI should be used, to make sure that ethics are at the forefront and help close the gap using AI, not widening it as I believe that we are doing right now. So I'm really interested what's in this room, and if you're working at that intersection, I want to hear what you're doing. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you too, Angela. I think that's important, and actually it touches on what Natália was mentioning, right? Pedro as well, and Emaan. Really having a practical framework could be really helpful, not only for civil society, but policymakers, and why not the private sector? I see Vasilis also nodding, and from the private sector himself, we can all recognize that every stakeholder will be touched by this. So wishing you the best for this project. Thank you so much. And now please let me call to Nancy Muriithi to share her project.
Okay.
Hello, Nancy. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Hi, everyone. So apologies, I'm not have my camera on today. Unfortunately, I'm having issues with my camera display. However, I think I'm audible and I can just proceed, right? Okay.
Go ahead.
So, okay, perfect. So my name is Nancy Muriithi from Kenya. So part of what I do, I am a cybersecurity engineer, and my work intersects between what the technical part looks like and what GRC involves, which is governance, risk, and compliance. So I work in the cybersecurity governance and security architecture within the financial services sector. And my work has evolved just beyond securing systems to making sure that I understand just how technology affects people, how it affects institutions, how it affects trust with clients. So alongside what I do for corporate, I'm also very involved with cybersecurity education, part of the different community-based digital safety initiatives across Africa. So my project entails what I'll be focusing on and why this project. I think first I want to answer that, why this project and what this project is about. So my project will involve developing an AI policy governance structure for financial institutions. So my role, I get to monitor and manage around 15 financial subsidiaries across different nations. And this has given me that inside visibility to how most organizations are increasingly using digital systems, using AI-powered platforms. And there's a serious gap around what governance looks like. So I have a startup called Sanctum Advisory Security. So I use that startup to help SMEs, to help faith-based organizations, because again, that was a very huge gap that I realized that right now, especially where right now data has become currency, faith-based organizations are handling a lot of data day in, day out, and there's no structure or no governance framework that guides these processes. So financial institutions, when you talk about fintechs, when you talk about faith-based organizations, may all look very different on the surface, but they are increasingly becoming connected through the different digital ecosystems that we are seeing in the different areas. So why this project? There are a number of questions that came to mind. So when we talk about AI, and I think it's something some of the fellows have mentioned, how do we know that these systems are fair? How are these decisions being explained? Who is accountable when things go wrong? Because tech is tech. Who's accountable when things go wrong? Who is going to
Thank you
implement
very
that?
much, Nancy.
Yes.
Indeed, I believe the practical AI risk governance framework for data, lending, and financial systems that you will be working on would be super helpful, and especially because it's grounded with information and evidence from the global majority. Congratulations. And let's see whether some participants of the open track are working in the financial sector, cybersecurity, and it resonates what you have shared. And in the end, they will be able to fill in the survey and let us know whether they want to connect with you. Thank you once again. So let's have some short exchange between you guys. I'm calling to the stage Meem, Angela, and Nancy so we can discuss briefly. And let me ask you, what would you say is the one thing policymakers need to learn about AI before they could actually govern it well?
I'm happy to start, everyone. So one thing I would say is this, right? Policymakers need to understand that AI doesn't give you the right or wrong answers. It gives you confident sounding output. And those are not the same thing. So most lawmakers I know, I've seen engage with this, treat it kind of like a black box. You put something in, the answer comes out, and that's where the mental model ends. They have AI advisors to, advise on literally everything else, but what they lack is actually using it themselves and seeing the knowledge that they know come out to be completely authoritative and entirely wrong. So the range between those things are enormous, and we can't reason about policy or real threats if they don't understand it. And I would just like to see some of them use it a little bit more.
Thank you, Angela. Not sure if Meem or Nancy would like to also react or comment?
If I
Yes.
may,
Sorry.
okay, fine. No, go on.
Okay. I think that's a very good question on what would want policymakers to understand. I think the top pointer that I would want to highlight is understanding AI not as a product but as a process. That it's not a product. I think most organizations, AI has been stuck in that product mindset that you build, you audit, you certify, you release, then that's it. But that's not how AI systems actually work in the real world, and especially in fintechs. An AI model will learn, will adapt, it drifts. So the model that you audited like 5 years ago or 1 month ago, it might not be the same model that is making decisions today. So policy makers need to understand that AI governance is ongoing. It requires continuous monitoring, continuous accountability, and it's not a one thing certification. It's an ongoing process.
I would just like to add that policymakers also need to understand that it's not just time, it's also like space, in the sense that borders are very porous. Like a lot of people I have talked to, especially in the EU, in the policy line, has this innate faith that you can somehow contain your data, your models, your everything, your entire data processing within your geographic zone. But especially with the agents that we have right now, whether they're autonomous or not is a philosophical debate, but we do see like even more data just automatically being transferred from one place to another. So this idea of, like, as Nancy said, this idea of the time boundary does not really, like, with time these things change very fast, and then with space you cannot realistically put a border on them. So this is something that policymakers need to understand more and more, and they're actually understanding it less and less, I feel, all over the world. Like, they have this innate belief that we will just put a wall, but a wall does not necessarily work for data the same way it works for humans. So that's it.
I wanted to add on to that, right? Like the borders, right? Like also don't define where the data is held, right? We have data centers in one place, it goes all over. And so they're focusing on, yes, threats and jobs and data centers and electricity and water and all of that. And that comes from different places of where you're using it and where that energy comes from.
Thank you, Angela. Well, thank you, the three of you, for these helpful answers. And to your last point, Angela, indeed, I think this topic is sometimes under the agenda, the table, not having the attention that should be paid by policymakers. And maybe it's the fact that, and we have one representative from the public sector among us, Rilla, the fellow from Indonesia's government, right? And you would be able to tell us more, Rilla, during the in-person residency, I'm sure, and along the fellowship. But indeed, the rhythm of working from the public sector sometimes is too quick. And this is not an excuse, of course. I myself was working in the government of Peru at some point some years ago. And before, from the private sector, I was very critical on why they're not paying attention to this topic or the other. But that's when multi-stakeholderism brings the importance, right? And the clarity, so that not everyone needs to do everything, but to have a seat in the table for everyone, so that we can really exchange and get to know these topics that sometimes are not carefully considered. Thank you so much, Angela, Meem, and Nancy. This was wonderful meeting you and get to know more about your projects. As time is flying, let me present the last but not least group of fellows that are joining us today. So please let me call first Mohamed to share with us in 2 minutes the project that you will be working with Globethics. The floor is yours, Mohamed.
Hello, everyone. I also thank Gio Globethics for this opportunity to be part of this amazing group of youth across the world. I'm Mohamed from Morocco. I have overall decades experience in terms of local governance and civil society specialist working across Morocco and in the Mediterranean region. I also lead Oral AI. It's a multi-stakeholder regional platform to amplify the Mediterranean voice in global AI development. It will see on the global scale. So across the southern Mediterranean countries from Morocco to Palestine, AI ambition is rising faster than governance readiness. These countries are adopting strategies, partnerships based on agendas, and laws, etc. But local institutions in the civil society still lack the mechanisms and tools for accountability, transparency, and human oversight. This is something that directly connects the UN AI governance dialogue priorities of bridging AI divide while protecting human rights. I can give you an example of how, for example, pushing major AI investments with Israel and giving it access to public data in terms of let's digitalize the public administration, but at what cost? And but governance does keep that's kept in peace with the deployment of these tools. So my proposed response is to develop a civil society-led AI governance readiness framework for local stakeholders across the Southern Mediterranean, starting from Morocco as a pilot phase, giving you the huge presence of institutions in Morocco, the UNDP, UNESCO, who are tackling on more potential access to the division and the destination for AI. The intended impact from this framework is to civil society and local stakeholders be agenda shapers, rather than policy takers in terms of AI governance. So it will be a practical policy-oriented tool that can help local governments and civil society to assess and identify governance gaps and while improving readiness before this system, this AI system, are deployed across the countries. This model will be built on ORMID AI, regional networks and research, especially last year as part of the Rilla 18 event, we presented an AI capacity based on the UN resolution that was presented on July 25, which stated that it should be strong policy framework for the AI user divide, and it will be linked with other regional platforms, for example, GFM, the EU Commission, the package called the new package in Mediterranean, which has a lot of digital investments in southern Mediterranean countries. So this gives us really opportunity to propose this governance platform that goes in line and I would say in the same direction of this AI investment. Yeah, looking forward to collaborate with them like this and to reinforce and learn. Why? Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you, Mohamed. Indeed, we were hearing you a bit fuzzy. Maybe sometimes it's Bluetooth AirPods. But if I may, because I'm not sure you mentioned it or maybe because about the sound, but to summarize it and tell me if I'm wrong, you will be developing a civil society-led AI governance readiness framework. And you will be building on what has been discussed in all these events that you mentioned, building on the Euromed AI's regional network and all the insights on AI capacity in Southern Mediterranean countries, discussions and debates on AI red lines, etc. If you think that you could type maybe 2 lines of your projects, because our participants from the open track at the end will be filling a survey, and if they are working on the same topic, they might mark that they would like to connect with you. Thank you so much, Mohamed. And maybe for the round of questions, we can maybe try it without the headphones, if where you are allowed it. I understand sometimes we need to use the headphones, so there's no problem at all. Let me please call now to the stage Chandrima Ganguly. The floor is yours, Chandrima. Would love to get to know a bit more of your project.
Thank you so much, Paula, and thank you so much the Globethics team for organizing this, and thank you for everyone for sticking around till the last cohort to listen to our projects. I really appreciate it. Hi, everyone. My name is Chandrima. I use they, them pronouns, and I am a physicist turned responsible AI expert, and now I'm independently consulting with NGOs and mission-driven organizations who are looking to adopt AI. A little bit about my journey and how I entered into this project. Essentially, like I said, I was a physicist for a long time, an academic one. And in 2020, like I'm sure all of us, I had a bit of time to think because I was locked indoors. And I realized that I wanted to use my skills to work on something that had actual social impact. So I decided to change my discipline from theoretical physics and applied mathematics into AI, but specifically responsible AI, because I know the track record physicists have, and I didn't want to be part of the problem. So I entered into responsible AI tooling and building out tooling and frameworks for private enterprises and companies. And I worked in the UK primarily. And in doing so, I was involved in several conversations, such as representing my company in the EU AI Act conversations and so on. So I had quite a bit of insight into AI governance. And something I realized was that a lot of the governance conversations happen very much from the top down, as many of my cohort mates have actually pointed out. And I became really interested in understanding how to advance participation of the end users in the building of the AI models, the tooling that gets built on top of the models, and indeed in selecting the use case itself for which AI gets deployed. Because of this, I led a research project with an NGO called Diverse AI, which looked into how participatory insights could be used to select use cases, as well as evaluate how effective AI is in those use cases. And through that, we ended up selecting AI in education, especially AI being used to help teachers, as a candidate use case. I am from Kolkata, India, which is where I'm joining you from. And something that I think we've all spoken about is that the perspectives of particularly under-resourced, marginalized communities in the Global South often get left out of those conversations. And so this research project was centered in Kolkata, in and around Kolkata, in West Bengal, in India, to understand how AI would impact education. And that led to the formation of my project, which is DARS. And I'll tell you a little bit about it very quickly. So DARS is an education AI project that seeks to create infrastructure, and this is important, both community and technical, to address inequity in access to education, particularly in rural and semi-rural India. So we use a technical resource such as AI-enabled learning, adaptive learning, discovery of metrics, Socratic learning, as well as question set generation, and helping teachers understand where the students are at, embedded in a community model, which we call a peer-to-peer community model. One of the things that DARS really is trying to do is not just help teachers, but also to build capacities in the students to be interested in teaching and become teachers themselves. So the peer-to-peer community model pairs up students who have not progressed as far in the learning journey with a student who has progressed a little bit further, and they mentor each other. And the way the model works is that collective achievement, when you actually mentor your peers, you are rewarded more than if you would complete the journey alone. In this way, we focus on building out capacity and we focus on building out strong community cohesion. So with through DARS, I really want to ensure that we can build out capacity and access to education resources, and include those who have been left out of the current hegemonic education landscape, especially across class, caste, religious, and gender lines. DARS is currently in pilot, and I'm looking for anybody who is able to provide collaboration and insight on how to scale it, especially with a view to understanding how AI-enabled community models can affect under-resourced communities in rural and semi-rural India. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chandrima, for the hard work that you've been doing to build and develop DARS. And it is an honor for us at Globethics to be supporting you to complete this pilot and produce this replicable community AI governance toolkit to help the education sector. Really, really, really appreciate it. So let's now get into a bit of exchange. Oh no, I'm really sorry. Let me call last but not least, Joel Christophe to share with us his project. Joel, are you with us? Is your connection
Yes,
good
can you hear me
now?
okay?
Yes,
Yeah,
we can
you
hear
me?
you. Wonderful.
Great. So yeah, in 2 minutes, my name is Joel Christophe. I'm an economist working on AI governance. I'm currently a technology and human rights fellow at Harvard Kennedy School and a fellow at the School of Government of Area, which is in Jakarta, Indonesia. And my project asks a simple question. Who gets to set the rules for the most powerful systems, and whose values are built into those rules? So the frontier AI that matters most is trained on huge amounts of computing power, and the frameworks governing that compute are written almost entirely in Washington, maybe a little bit less in Brussels. But many of the regions of the world, including Asia and Africa, including communities that have different cultural, linguistic, and religious beliefs, they are framed as importers of rules rather than shapers. And so I've been working on changing who sits at the table. My project builds upon a think tank I founded in South Africa, and it's looking more at designing compute permit systems for high-stakes AI training in which religious or customary authorities matter. So it's not just about technical regulation, but also about representation of different types of values in these systems. And so the goal is to get to governance that is both technically credible and locally legitimate. The intended outcome is a concrete policy prototype and a working paper, also a stakeholder workshop that I could use to bring regulators together to discuss faith-based ethics. So this is one area where being spread around the world is, I think, a great advantage for us as a cohort. And what I'm seeking from this community specifically are connections to people working on faith-based or community-led approaches to technology governance, especially anyone who has translated moral or religious frameworks into practical policy levers. So if that's you, I would love to talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joel. That was perfect timing. And indeed, I think it's critical, the work that you're doing in a sense, how do we really make sure that we have participatory AI governance, right? And hopefully we've got many of the open track participants that would like to join and support your work. So let me ask you a question before we open the floor for Q&A with the participants of the open track. To Mohamed, Chandrima, and Joel, if the communities most affected by AI had designed its governance frameworks, what do you think this would look completely different?
I can start if that's easier. So one of the things that I always find in my experience in working with large-scale enterprises and corporations are looking to adopt AI is that it feels like AI is shoehorned in often as an afterthought, and there is a bit of a hype cycle to, want to use AI, and then we'll figure out whether it's useful and what we're going to use it for much later. In contrast, whenever I've worked with communities, especially grassroots organizations, there is either a sense of, I think, perhaps hesitation or when I bring up using AI or even around the concept of AI, and people ask questions like, what's it for? How much is it going to cost? And can't I do it if I don't use AI? Which may seem basic, but they're like very important questions that I think more organizations should be asking. So if grassroots communities had control of how AI gets designed, how it's deployed, what it's used for, I think we'd see dramatic differences in even, for example, the infrastructure that goes into building AI models. Scientifically, we know that smaller models that are fine-tuned for specific purposes with curated data sets often outperform larger models. So I think we'd see architectures which would be more agile in terms of size of models. We'd also see architectures that were more cost effective and resource effective and would not cause so much of a drain upon the natural resources that is happening often where these communities are situated. And in terms of AI alignment and bias and fairness, given that these models would be instated in use cases and applications for specific use cases and therefore trained on data for those specific use cases, which could be embedded in a model where the community owns that resource, the AI alignment problem would either be would not be exacerbated as much, or even I would venture to say not exist, because you know what you want to use AI for, you've built the app for it, you've used the data for it, and you govern it. So I think we'd actually see AI innovation in a sustainable way happen, possibly for the first time in the history of creating AI models.
What I would briefly add is that I think there would be fewer mistakes and cleaning up messes after the fact, because when you involve other communities and people who think differently, you slow the process down and have people consider how applications can be used or misused in different contexts. So I think a lot of the misuse, misalignment problems that we're facing, they could be tackled more effectively. But it's also true that the pressures to accelerate, to deploy things before they're safe, that's coming precisely from a kind of homogeneity in the way that a lot of the leading actors are playing. So I think that there would be quite a few benefits from diversifying, as we would expect from many other more participatory governance processes.
Yes, and I would like to add, yes, you mentioned about data, about the use of tech that is relevant to the context. But I would also ask, I would add, do we need AI for this specific problem? Can we use another solution, digital solution, and call it a day? So yeah, ensuring that having a strong local governance from the start will make people need addressed by these tools. And it will also include one element in places like the south of Mediterranean, where there is like first languages, and we call low resource languages, where top AI labs right now trying to collect data to make their models more understand this language. For sure, there will be an impact on either public services of this, where this AI is deployed. And lastly, there will be safeguards before deployment. So not only after harm occurs. So community would ask, what could go wrong if a woman, a youth, or someone from the rural world, or people with low digital literacy. So this would mean strong risk assessment, red lines. This is a trendy and trendy topic that we discuss at this stage before the Geneva Convention, and human oversight in high impact sectors. Yeah.
Thank you so much to the three of you. Chandrima, do you think I can ask you a follow-up question? Then maybe this is the way I'm opening the Q&A. But given that you have been working with different communities for developing DARs, have you been in a situation where you found like a so-called dichotomy where people, they want their data to be included in some systems for more, diversity and inclusion, but at the same time, they're looking for sovereignty of data. Have you found yourself in this situation? What has it been? If you would like to share with us.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, like I mentioned, because I work in rural and semi-rural India, we have a very severe infrastructure constraint. Like most people do have phones, but it's a phone per family kind of situation. And the network is like 2G or 3G. So running live inference on a large model is almost out of the question. So often, like the way we get around it in DARS is that we have a small model which is trained. But since we're in pilot, we don't have enough specific training data for that to be really that performant. So we end up caching responses. All of this is to say, Paula, is that we are not in a situation right now where we can really think where we can actually have a performance solution that works with the current infrastructure constraints that would be able to use LLMs, so to speak. So for us, the only way forward is a sovereign solution. It has to be a local solution. It has to be tailored. It has to work on a laptop in the village school, if you know what I mean. And that's why, like in terms of like the licensing of DARS, right now we've got a Creative Commons licensing, but as we get more users, we're really pushing for it to go towards a sort of a data commons model where the technical resource of the trained model, the data sets, all of this is shared by that particular school or a set of villages and so on. So, it is sovereign by design. We don't have another choice.
Indeed, and that's why it's so important. I'm remembering a term that, in fact, an Indian civil society organization called Digital Empowerment Foundation is advocating for, which is local approach, because it's important to think, in a globalized way, but at the same time, local is very important, and especially when we have special needs. And it happens. I am Peruvian. I'm thinking also when you speak about rural India, I think about rural Peru and these other cities in South America where they need a special functionalities or even special systems so that they can also benefit from artificial intelligence. Thank you so much, guys. So I am removing the spotlight so we can see all the fellows that are still with us. First of all, let me just refer to the chat because we have shared the survey for our participants of the open track. Dear participants, please fill out this survey if you would like to contribute to our fellows projects. In the survey, which is very short, we just ask you to share your contact details, of course, that we will be sharing with the fellow that you will mark that you would like to contribute. But at the same time, we need to know how you would like to contribute. In that sense, if you are researching on the same topic that they are doing, if you are running any project or implementing already an activity that is aligned with it, or if you have any other way to contribute from the technical side, as Emaan was saying, for instance, or as Chandrima was asking, if you have some knowledge into how to escalate these projects and pilots, please do not hesitate. From Globethics, we will be more than happy to be creating these connections and to get a stronger community through the open track. Stay tuned as well for the next webinars, as it will be themed either from the topics from our fellows for what they're working with experts, but at the same time with external experts on the topic on artificial intelligence, ethics and governance. Now, we've got 10 minutes. If any of you have any question to our fellows, do not hesitate to use the Q&A box or raise your hand, and we will be happy to give you the permission to open the mic. The survey link has been shared again. Thank you so much, Josie. In the meantime, while our audience reflects whether they would like to have any question, I would also like to refer to our fellows. If you guys have any reaction or question to another fellow, I think this is also a great moment to do. We've got a little of time here, either among us or with the audience. Checking here, we're good. Yeah, it looks like we do not have that much of a questions. I don't see the Q&A box. I don't know if the problem is, no, in fact, there is, I'm sorry. There was one notification. Yeah, so we've got a gift here asking about Deborah. Deborah could not join today's webinar. We will be happy to pass your message to you as she's working from your country, but do not hesitate, because in the survey you will find a short description of Deborah's project. At the same time, we've got Arno, Aryan, who are part of the fellow cohort, but due to agenda and previous commitments, they will not be able to join. So, but if you're working on a topic that you would like to contribute, please don't hesitate. Lily is asking a question for Emaan. So Emaan, how are your research helping the minority Hindu community in Pakistan?
Sure, I can take that. Thank you, Lily, for the question. So, primarily, like the work I do at the National Commission for Human Rights is that I work on the complaint cell and the research knowledge production cell. Regarding Hindu communities, the biggest concern that we've seen is bonded labor. A lot of Hindu community members are part of bonded labor, which we've been working on in terms of policy, in terms of freeing these families, in terms of telling them about their rights, etc. In terms of AI-enabled violence, the most incidents that we've seen is entrapment of young girls by Muslim men into marriage. This is primarily in Sindh. So this is something our Sindh project office has been working on with communities in rural Sindh to educate them on their marriage rights as per Hindu marriage laws, and just making the young girls aware of their rights, their access to complaint mechanisms, and this, I guess, veers into the field of tech facilitated violence against women, which does have that AI aspect. But in terms of AI ethics, it's not like a big topic there. Thank you.
Thank you, Emaan. And I'm sure there will be maybe coming some more questions that maybe at Globethics we will collect. So we may be passing. Maud is also asking, Vasilis is not with us anymore as he had to move to a meeting, but if Meem can reply, as there is a question here at the intersection of law and tech, or I would say if I'm allowed, Maud, any other fellow that would like to reply. The question is, what perspectives in the current legal academic literature are you looking at with respect to AI governance? Because I see many fellows here working at AI governance at the same time. And well, Vasilis is not here, so the question on the EU, if any of the fellows here would like to answer, it's around a governance vacuum. Yes, Meem, thank you.
Oh, a big thing that we're looking at right now is the development of the omnibus in the EU, because there has been a lot of talk around, not just talk, a lot of push around like making AI laws weaker, to so to speak, to debilitate them so that we can foster more innovation. But there are contrary opinions as well, because a lot of us, like a lot of academicians at least, like to believe that innovation does not necessarily get hindered by legal protection to people. Like, think about it, like if you have a I don't know, if you have a theme park and it has insurance, there is actually a higher chance of people going there because a roller coaster is not going to fall on them. So like technology that is safe and secure does not necessarily mean that people will be using less of them, and maybe the impedance in innovation is elsewhere. So this is something that we are looking at actively in our group, and a lot of groups we know about, like these kind of legal frameworks that are getting constantly torn apart, because we like to believe that AI changes very frequently, but what also changes is the mind of the policymakers, especially with election cycles. So this is something that we have been seeing a lot because ever since there was a report called the Draghi report from Mario Draghi of Italy, this has been a big topic, and it's not just in Europe, because China, for example, has actually stronger laws over time, and yet their innovation is not hindering at any point, as far as we're concerned. So whether innovation gets hindered or not is something that we in this intersection really are very interested in, I would say.
So I just wanted to say a few things on the EU AI Act, because this is also part of my current postdoc research. And for the few people we've interviewed so far, even people involved in the process, the postponing of the adoption of the high risk enforcement rules, it's not a surprise at all, because this has started since the negotiation of the process. There are a lot of pressure from big tech companies, ranging from the way they're framing their position in the public hearing processes to even actual pressure in the trilogue meetings in the negotiation process. So it's not surprising at all to see this being postponed one more time. But some people say that they had to renounce a little bit in some parts of the agreement. And I think one of the main points of the high risk, the definition of high risk systems and the policy as well, it's one of the main points of discussion and controversy. So I think there's still more to come, but I don't think it's a surprise to see this being postponed, or even, I'm pretty sure you're going to even see more disputes from here until the actual date.
Thank you, Pedro. I'm not seeing any other question, but if I may follow up on what you guys have been discussing, because your projects build, if in some cases are sectoral, like Natália working more in the medical part, Nancy on the financial one, Mohamed with local government, but I do see that many of you are worried and concerned about bringing inclusion, but at the same time building on local. So what are your thoughts? I know this is maybe a hard one and only having 4 minutes. If you could share your thoughts on how can we balance, this local perspective with not creating a new set of standards that may set aside a country outside of, the global standard many of them had been seeking. What are your thoughts on this balance, local, global frameworks for AI governance and ethics?
I can start. So yeah, I think this is a good remark. I think as a first step, we for the example of context of Morocco, we can start on existing participatory mechanism that already are formal. They are in law across the country. This is the first level. Second is to tap on existing related laws. For example, in Morocco, we don't have really a law linked to AI, but we have, for example, data protection, personal information, the use of digital, let's say, solution in public administration. And then when we have, I would say, a good local basis of something really proven, a model at local level, then we can use different mediums of advocacy to urge decision makers at the national level, the government level, to ensure that the laws reflect the needs and perspective of local communities, given its diverse, I would say, in terms of diversity, in terms of culture, languages, tradition, etc. The second thing is that you have these countries in the Southern Mediterranean where they are really trying to attract investment either from private sector or from the EU or other entities. So they are trying to give this fancy image of the human rights situation to make them, urge them to invest more money into countries. But I think using other mediums, if we are talking about the EU, there are other channels that the civil society organization can tap on and give the real situation of how AI is shaped, how this digital solution are shaped and impact the people. And we have also other UN mechanisms with the other national civil society organization where this less human right oversight can be included in what we call the reports that civil society present to the UN, different UN commissions. Yeah.
Also, Paula, sorry, I was trying to raise my hand, but it wasn't working for me. So sorry for that. I wanted to add a teeny tiny comment if we have the time regarding the postponement, sorry, on the EU AI Act, if that's okay.
Sure thing. We have 1 minute, so if you could be briefly.
Okay, I'll be really fast. So maybe that reflects like the broader challenge of governing technology that evolves faster than the regulatory system. So on one hand, delays can be a little bit frustrating because sectors like healthcare and clinical research urgently need clear standards for accountability and transparency and patient protection. But also on the other hand, I also understand that the need to ensure regulation is technically feasible and implementable and that does not intentionally hinder innovation or research. So in my view, this highlights the importance of continuous dialogue between policymakers and the industry and researchers and clinicians and ethicists. So effective AI governance should not be rushed, but it also cannot be lag too far behind technological development, especially when high-risk systems may directly affect human and fundamental rights.
Thank you. And maybe that's when a solution of sectoral regulation and accompaniment with maybe the health ministry or working on sandboxes could be a good solution, right? It's a pity that we are starting this debate when we're running out of time, but we have until December to continue this dialogue. So I would like to thank you, first of all, our fellows that joined and presented their projects and are starting this journey all together and with Globethics. Thank you so much. And also thank you to the participants to the open track to join and that have already been filling out the survey. I'm seeing some responses already. You will receive this survey by email tomorrow and it will be open until Sunday. So don't hesitate to think about it and see how you guys can get engaged with the fellowship. Thank you once again. I wish you a productive and exciting rest of the week and until next time. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.